So the time has come. Welcome everyone to my session about adaptive cards, or maybe the other way around. Welcome to Teams Day Online, the second edition. I'm really glad to be here with you. And I have to say that I woke up this morning and I thought that 9 a.m. the time, the PSD time is also my time zone. So I was ready 6 hours ago to have this session. And since then, I'm waiting impatiently to deliver the session. So I hope that it will just be, that it will move on and it will be done properly without any issues around demos. So the session today, the first issue. Okay. The session is about the adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams processes. For those of you who haven't seen this session yet or don't know what is adaptive cards, this is properly and the best idea to be at that presentation at this time. Before I continue, I want to thank our sponsors, because without them, even the online events are hard to be organized. I know something about that because I do organize events as well. So yeah, big applause and thank you very much, sponsors, for supporting this initiative. A few words about me. I'm Business Applications MVP. I'm from Poland in Warsaw. And well, I just call myself an expert in all these Microsoft related technologies, Power Platform, SharePoint, and other products. If you have any questions, the best way to reach me is to simply type in this URL, so aka.ms/Poszytek, and there you can find all links to my Twitter account, YouTube account, and everything else. So, well, I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter to have the latest and really cool information and how-to guides and articles. Right, and now speaking about that, the fact that I'm also organizing events. So if you would like to join an event this Saturday around Power Platform, Dynamics 365, Dynamics Finance Operations, ERP, and also collaboration, then this Saturday, 3rd of October, starting 2 p.m. UTC +2. So yeah, it is in Central European time zone. Therefore, please register. We have still 3 days left, and we have also cool prizes sponsored by our Platinum sponsor. So don't hesitate and just join us at this event. All right, and that's enough of self-advertising and self-promotion. Right. The agenda for today is short. First, I'll just briefly go through the story because we don't have enough time to go deep into that. Then I'll just go really fast through message cards and adaptive cards and demos. And lastly, I'll talk about the future. So when we look at the modern applications, modern social media applications, communication applications, we can clearly identify those areas of contents that we can tell are coming from a different source. However, they seamlessly are embedded in the experience of this application or this web page, and therefore we just consume them along with all the other content. So these external content is being embedded, is being presented by the hosts, aligned to the experience, to the user interface of that host, but still the content is coming from elsewhere. And so this is kind of a card. This is kind of a content that we call the card. So what are the cards in the end? This is just the method to display the content that we want inside the host experience and following this seamless integration. So we don't really need to focus on creating the content that follows the user experience of that particular host. We just need to focus on the content itself. So what is the story about the adaptive cards and, well, the cards in Microsoft? First, in 2016, Microsoft realized that they have already multiple teams working on the same concept. So they had a bot framework team working on adaptive cards, kind of at that moment. They had Exchange team working on actionable messages. They had Windows team working on those live tiles. And so they thought, hey, let's merge all these teams together and let's create a simple and unified technology, because then we can all use from that and benefit from that. We don't need to really compete with each other. Let's just bring all these people together and build something together. And so 2017, this is when Matt Hidinger and David Clough set up the team. That's the only focus, is to create this unified technology. And later that year, they came up with the first idea of message cards, which were built directly on top of actionable messages that the Exchange team was working. Why just in a second. And then later on next year, they announced the final release of the version 1.0 for the adaptive cards. So who are those two men? Matt Hittinger is Principal Product Manager for Adaptive Cards at Microsoft. Before he joined Microsoft in 2017, he was working on mainly mobile applications and products for high-profile consumer brands. And then he met and crossed with user demands, with user requirements, with user expectations regarding interfaces and user experience. And this knowledge he brought to Microsoft, and he's using for the adaptive cards as an interface as well. He's also a very active community person. He attends a lot of user groups. He speaks at events, and you can find him on Twitter as well. Now, on the other hand, we have David, who is working for Microsoft for over 15 years. Yes, for over 15 years already. And before he joined and also became Principal Product Manager with Matt in the team, he was working for everything around Exchange. So he, for example, created the AWS web services. He was working on actionable messages, and right now inside the team, he's leading this branch that is focused on development. So he created Adaptive Cards Designer. He created actionable messages designer. He's working on unifying the schema for both adaptive cards and actionable messages. So he's the one working on the backend. Done. So why cards built by Microsoft are so special? Well, first of all, as said, they have this native rendering on any device that embeds the SDK. Secondly, it adopts the user experience of the host. So we don't actually need to create a separate content or layout for mobile, for desktop, for web, for mobile web, for whatever else. We just need to create content, and then the host is going to adopt the content and display it accordingly to the device, to the version of application it is using. Then, thanks to that fact, this is quite a low cost production, because we don't have to focus and create separate content per each device, right? Per each channel. And it's quite secure, or it's even very secure, because we define the content using JSON, and then the JSON has its schema. So once it is being rendered, then anything that is not inside the schema is just being either displayed as a text or is not even being displayed at all. So if someone would try to pass some malicious code, then it won't simply be executed. So that's really safe for the end user. Now, on the other hand, the schema that Microsoft built is open source and is available on GitHub. So anyone who's a developer can actually take the schema, and if there is something that the person is missing, they can easily extend the schema with their own declarations and their own functionalities. Plus, the adaptive cards are not only used to display content and be used to for consumption of the end user, but they're also used to gather feedback from the user. So they have actions, they have open URLs, actions, submit forms, and they also have input fields to collect information back from the user. Plus, what is also important from ever that it was created from the day one, they are built to be properly interpreted or supported or handled by the applications that convert text to speech. So even for people with the disabilities, those cards can be used and consumed. Okay, so now very briefly about the message cards. They were created because David Lowe was from the Exchange team, so they brought the actionable messages. They extended the schema a little bit. However, this technology is now the technology of the past, so don't use it. Now, on the other hand, we have adaptive cards, which is a successor of the message cards. So it inherited everything that was really good in message cards. Plus, right now, it has a way more advanced schema, and it also has its SDK available for anyone, everywhere. Now, when speaking about adaptive cards, we can actually find the SDK already present in most of the Microsoft communication-focused applications like Outlook, Teams, Web Chat, Cortana, and Timeline, so the Windows Timeline. Plus, January next year, it should also arrive in Power Virtual Agents. Plus, When speaking about the SDK, you can also use it to create your own applications if you're a developer. And then speaking about the SDK, it is available for most of the open source platforms that you can use to create software and in JavaScript. So while speaking about that, you can easily use that technology in most of the web designs and web projects. So that gives you like a huge possibility to really create a lot of interface just using adaptive cards without actually building DOM structure from scratch. Now, the schema of adaptive cards is quite simple. This is actually the version 1.0. However, since the version 1.0, what has changed in the general arrangement or layout of the schema is that the actions here doesn't have to be always at the bottom below the body, but you can actually use a thing that is called an action set and put actions anywhere inside the body. So the schema now is very fluent, but is always built from the predefined elements like the containers, which is the column set, fact set, action set, image set. And then in those containers, you can put controls like text, like image, like number, rich text as well. Or you can as well put the inputs like input text fields, radio, checkbox, drop down, and whatever you can name. So this schema actually allows you to create quite fancy cards with a different layouts, with a single column layout, with multiple column layouts, vertically, horizontally, however you want and however you like. So just try it. Now, if you'd like to actually try your bests with adaptive cards, then the best way is to go into adaptivecards.ao/designer. So this is what I'm now presenting. You'll be seeing this in action just in a few moments. So this is a designer that helps you to design the card. Oh, maybe I'll just go there and show you how it works. Now which here. So that's a designer, and well, actually, when you want to create an adaptive card, you simply have to go to this URL here, and then you can start building a card from scratch or from an existing template, and simply just using this drag and drop approach to put elements on the canvas and then configure them in the element properties. So this is how it works. Now, on the other hand, if you would like to create an actionable message, so something that is going to be sent to Outlook users, then you need to navigate to Actionable Messages Designer, which is quite simple and quite similar because it also starts from you to choose the layout that you want to use to start, maybe not from scratch, but from the existing layout. And then again, you can just use different containers and put them on a canvas and then put elements within them. And the same as it happens with adaptive cards, you need to then go to the properties and define the properties. So this is how it works. And this is how you actually build the cards. Now, I should be now on a second slide. Okay, this is the one. And well, having that said, it's time for the demo. I know you're excited as I am because I hope it will not crash. Right, so what is the time? Wow, I'm extremely fast. If you have any questions, by the way, try to write them in chat window. Well, there is no other way actually to post them. So yes, post them in a Q&A, and we will try to answer them after the presentation, or maybe even during the presentation. All right. Okay, all tabs have expired, so let me just click them through so they will refresh. The demo I want to show you is built around the invoice process, the invoice approval. So the idea here is that we have an application, let's call the front desk has an application, and their purpose is to scan the invoice and then upload it to the application. Now, once the invoice is uploaded to the application, there is an AI builder model trained to identify, to discover data on the invoice, and simply build an adaptive card from the data recognized in the invoice and send it to a channel in Microsoft Teams that is dedicated for the accountancy. Now, in the accountancy team, anyone actually has to review the invoice and approve it or reject it right from that team channel conversation. Now, once this is completed, the next step would be to trigger an RPA that is actually registering data from that invoice inside legacy old CRM. However, this part is now turned off, so it won't bother us. Okay, so let me start by uploading the new invoice. So right now there is an invoice uploaded. This is an invoice in Polish zlotys for some spare parts to toys. So the AI builder model, the AI builder actually has recognized with a quite high confidence all the information I really need. So now I can send it for approval. Now, there are two things actually happening right now. The first one is that the accountancy team will receive their adaptive card. You can see that it has already appeared here. So there is an adaptive card for the accountancy team that actually has all the details, right? So it has the information about to whom it was issued, the invoice details, and all the items. And right here, anyone from the team can actually approve or reject the invoice, but that's not it. On the other hand, there is also a second action happening. And so this is the actionable message that is being sent to, let's call that an accountancy team lead. So this is also something we can use and create using the adaptive card schema, but it's being sent to Outlook, not to Teams. The schema is quite, it has some minor differences. However, the authoring process looks really the same. The only thing that you have to be aware is that once you craft that adaptive card for actionable message and you want it to send to someone in your organization, you need to go through a process on the actionable messages or email developer dashboard for the approval. So you need to create a new provider and then use this provider to sign that adaptive card sent in email so that it is being displayed. But from that on, you're able to send these fancy looking interactive adaptive cards in emails as well. All right, so now I'll just say, okay, all fine, and approve it. Now, once I hit approve, this card is going to be replaced with the confirmation one. Unfortunately, in Microsoft Teams, we are unable to really craft this confirmation card. So it will be replaced by the default one designed by the Microsoft, and there is yet nothing we can do about it. So, well, I personally don't like it. The only thing that can be changed here is this message. However, this message is being designed or defined in advance. So again, it cannot display any information that user provided in the card that was closed. Now, on the other hand, when speaking about the actionable messages, those buttons here, they allows us to define the target. So where the contents from this card is going to be sent. And in return, it also allows us to send back a confirmation card, the one that is going to be displayed once this one is closed. So here in this scenario, we have really a full control over what is being displayed and how it looks like. So you can see that the card here has also been closed, but its design is still following the previous one. Okay, so how it was all done. First, let me jump to the adaptive cards, the first process. So once I hit send for approval in the application, in Power Apps application, what this whole solution or this whole flow did was first it designed the, let's call them headers of adaptive cards, separate one for Teams, separate one for actionable messages. Sorry. This originator here, this is the information, this is the GUID that is being taken from that dashboard. So once you register a new provider, in return, you will be given this originator ID. And without that, you won't be able to send actionable message to anyone else but you. Now, once that is done, Flow is parsing the JSON that is coming from AI Builder. And then it is trying to create contents of actionable message. So for each item from the invoice, it is simply creating a part of a JSON that is adding or appending to existing adaptive cards code. And finally, there is this parallel branch. So in one branch, it is sending this adaptive card to a Teams user and is waiting for the response. Now, note one thing, we have like 4 actions in Microsoft Teams stack of actions in Power Automate that allows us to send adaptive cards to users. 2 of them are post an adaptive card to a Teams channel or Teams user and wait for a response. These 2 actions allows you to create those adaptive cards, send them to users, and then grab back their responses. And there are 2 other actions that are called post your own adaptive card to Teams channel or Teams user. And these 2 actions allows you only to send adaptive cards, but they will never wait for the response. Well, never unless you are sending an adaptive card generated by the task action. All right, so then this is being sent. And then on the other hand, there is also the send an email action that sends this adaptive card as actionable message to the user. Now, for the adaptive card branch, then based on the outcome, so whether it was approved or rejected, it is simply triggering a different scenario. So for yes, it is sending confirmation email. For no, it is sending rejection email. And it also was meant to trigger this chat flow, however, it is now turned off. Now for actionable message, the thing is a little bit different because that button for approve or reject is actually triggering another flow. So this is the flow that is being triggered. It is being triggered by the HTTP request trigger. So it receives the data from that email. And again, then based on the outcome, it is sending a proper adaptive card replacement, right? So here this response is also containing in its body a valid adaptive card. And thanks to the header value card update in the body, Outlook knows that it has to replace the existing adaptive card with a new one. So this is how it works. Okay, let me show you now a different example. This is something from, let's say, I just need to find it. This is something from, where is it? From the governance area. Quite recently, we were given a new trigger for Microsoft Teams in Power Automate that is being called for a selected message. Now, these flows that are created using that trigger are actually going to be available for any user within Microsoft Teams. So once user selects a message and then click this ellipsis icon and then hover over the more actions, there is going to be a list of all those flows that are created using this particular trigger. Now, in my case, I have crafted, well, why am I showing that? Well, because once I click it, then there is a modular window display that actually shows an adaptive card that I built for this purpose. And here in this scenario, that process is actually used to help users to actually moderate the content within Teams. So by clicking that more actions and trigger the flow, they're able to either report the message or request its deletion, or as well request to send them the copy of this message. Now, for example, if they request to report the message, they need to check why. So choose the reason. For the deletion, well, there is also a field for the explanation and so on. So let me just show you how it works. Now, once this is submitted, then the flow that is now being triggered is sending a message to Teams administrators who have their own channel. So right from here, I should receive a new request. Okay, there is a new request that is mentioning me as the Teams administrator. And well, okay, general researcher shouldn't be available to access this area, but well, whatever. Let me do it properly. So from my Teams administrator account. So it is mentioning me, so me as a Teams administrator also have this information that something or someone mentioned me, so it will be also available in the activity. And so I have the information about the message. I can click to open this message to see what are we actually talking about. Now it is being hovered with this yellow hello effect. And so from here I can again express whether I have completed this task, maybe I have contacted the user or whatever happened. And here again, unfortunately, this confirmation message is going to be displayed, cannot be changed. It also displays this layout and we can't do anything else. Now, one more thing that happens here is that once this message was reported, there is also a new response added to that message that has been reported with a mention to the user who is the author of that message, plus information that it is now under investigation. So now how this was done. Okay, this has expired again. All right, so that's the flow. And now, as said, it is being triggered by the new trigger that we have, I think, like since February or even March this year, or maybe later. But anyway, what it does, the new trigger, it allows you to design an adaptive card that is being shown once user actually clicks the name of the flow. Oh, one more important is that the name of the flow is also being used as a display name in that context menu. So just be sure not to use too long flow names because they won't be displayed. They will be truncated. So once you open this action, this trigger, you can see that it is already following the approach of the new configuration of adaptive cards actions. So it has this designer built in within Microsoft Power Automate experience. So you can craft the adaptive card right from Power Automate. You don't have to actually navigate anywhere else. You can just do it in here. And then you also need to define the dialog window width and height. Now, once this trigger is being triggered or executed, it then checks what was the request type. So if it was a report or delete or copy. And then, for example, for the report, it is now also using the new actions we have in Microsoft Teams. So to get a user's mention. No, it is not working for groups mentioning. So you can only mention a user. And then it is posting the reply to that message that has been reported using that mention. Plus, it is sending this adaptive card to the Teams channel with Teams administrator so they can handle it. Now, here, this adaptive card, as you can see, it is following the old, let's say, approach. So it has this long field to copy paste JSON. It doesn't have this fancy looking built-in adaptive cards designer. So one day, hopefully, this all going to be unified. Until then, well, we need to just use it as it is. And then finally, there is an old action used to post a message to a flow to a user using the flow bot, and that's it. All right. I see I still have like 10 minutes. I see no questions, no Q&A things. So I don't know, maybe you can write down if you like the demos, if you'd like to know something else, maybe see another one, or maybe if I'm talking too fast. Nothing. Okay, I'll just give like a minute. Because I have one more demo, but maybe I'll show it if I still have a time. All right. Now, what I would like to talk about right now is a thing that is called the adaptive cards templating. Now, with the scenario I showed you around the invoices, I had to actually design the adaptive card, then go through every item that was present on the invoice and like manually concatenate all these chunks to create fancy looking adaptive card. But what if there was a different approach? Well, soon there will be. I mean, it is already working, but not yet in Microsoft Teams. So the adaptive cards templating gives you this richer design integration because you can actually define adaptive card JSON on the one hand, on the one side, and then define data on the other hand or on the other side. And then this is all being merged. It simplifies, it helps us to simplify the development of workflows because, as said, we don't need to really focus on designing the very fixed adaptive cards, but we can do the more dynamic. This is already available in SDK. This is already available in version 1.2 of adaptive cards. That is even the previous version, because right now we are working with 1.3 already, but yet it is not available in Teams, as I said. Plus, maybe one day we'll be also given a solution and an application from the adaptive cards team to help us create like a center of not excellence, but a single point in organization where anyone can create adaptive cards and where from anyone can look them up to display, for example, in Microsoft Teams. So like to have the templating service at their hand to post adaptive cards across multiple channels, but always defined in a single point and maintained in a single point. All right, so that's an example of an adaptive card that is like fixed. So all the values are in place. It might be that the adaptive card, the whole JSON is being generated by the application's code, or like in Power Automate, I have placeholders instead of values here and there, so I can actually put values from previous actions here. But still, this is not a point because if I need to change something, I need to again go down to the adaptive cards schema, this sorry, not schema, but this JSON declaration and manipulate it. So how much more comfortably or easily it would be that we don't need to actually define anything here, either a variable or a fixed value, but instead maybe you could put like the placeholders that would be replaced by the bot, by the host in the real time with actual data. So the templating service is, the templating language is something that helps us to define those placeholders here, and then to define the data so that once the card is being generated, those placeholders are being replaced by the actual values from the data JSON. And in the end, we again have the same adaptive card as we used to have if we define all these values prior to that. So with adaptive cards expression, with adaptive cards templating language, we also have the expressions. So the language is not only to replace the specific areas in adaptive card with the data, but also it gives us a lot of possibilities around creating loops, around creating conditions, around creating around formatting text, or for example from string to number, or to change date format, and so on. And therefore the adaptive cards templating language is quite an intensive or massive thing that we can use to really create adaptive cards much more faster, and then simply display all the content, all the data, this dynamic data inside, just by providing the JSON with contents. Now, let me show you one thing. So the adaptive card that I have created to display the invoice details was quite, it required a lot of effort from my side to actually design it, and then to, as I said, merge all those items from the invoice. So you saw that there was a loop, there was an append to string variable, quite an effort. So if I had the templating language working, then what I would only put in the adaptive cards action in Power Automate would be something like that. So with all these places where I would like to display some dynamic values replaced to the placeholders. Plus, as you can see, there is only one row for the items, but because the data format that is being used here, so this is the data format being used here for displaying the items, it is a type of a table, then the templating language knows that it has to actually go through every item within this table and then replicate the same structure per each row. And that's really, really awesome, because it saves you a lot of work, actually. There is also something about there is also some thing about the conditions. So for example, this string here is only going to be displayed or available if the total value of the invoice is going to be above 5,000. So with all those things, we can easily create a dynamic card that works for many scenarios. So now, once I hit the preview mode, all those placeholders, all the conditions or the expressions are going to be executed and replaced by the real data. So because the data coming back from AI Bidder is actually in a JSON format, therefore, what I would only have to do is to provide that JSON to the adaptive cards, and therefore all work would be done. Because this is yet not supported, I need to actually do all this manually and on my own, which takes a little bit of more time. All right. Ooh. What can we expect next? Right now, we are working with the version 1.3. It was released just in September. And one of the coolest features that were brought by the versions 1.1, 1.2 were, for example, the media support. So we are able to play videos, play music directly from the card. It doesn't work in Teams as well. We are also given the basic C4 image support. So if you have images that are being stored somewhere inside a secured storage that requires user to authenticate prior to see the images, you can simply abandon providing image via the URL. We can convert them to base64 and display this way as a data URI. There are also inline actions. Now with version 1.3, what is the most expected and the most desired functionality is actually the advanced input validations. So we are now able to actually identify or mark fields that are required. So you can't submit a card if you're not filling in these fields. We can define regular expressions, so to validate the data type inside the fields, the format of the data type input in the field. So we can really create a very, maybe not advanced, not still advanced forms, but more complex forms that do have the validation in place, so we can be sure that user actually is providing data we are expecting in the format we are expecting and in the scope we are expecting. Now, speaking about the version 2.0, so this is the version that is still something that the team is working on. There are more changes to the templating language coming up. There are new data bindings, for example, a device binding scope, which will give the adaptive card like the knowledge about a device where it is being displayed. So for example, if you know, hey, I'm being displayed on iOS or Android or in web, and therefore you will be also able to create a different layout of the adaptive card or hide parts of the adaptive card based on the device it is being displayed. Right, so with this version 2 point something, there is hopefully the unified action, it's called the universal actions introduced. So we'll not be having a separate action for submit, for get, for open URL, for toggle, but there is going to be one action that will cover all the dynamic functionalities of adaptive cards. And then, for example, looking for the version 3 plus something, we will hopefully have a good working card authoring service. So this is that solution, that software that Microsoft is also working on to give us a single place where all the cards are being stored, like the repository of cards, authored, and from where this templating service could take them to display on different devices. And if you're interested in what the adaptive cards team is working on, what is on the roadmap, actually how those changes will look like, then navigate to aka.ms AC roadmap, and there you can find the product board web page, where actually you will see not only what is in the plan, what is on the roadmap, but as well how those changes are going to look like, because there is like a lot of GIFs showing how that specific functionality can look like. Plus there is an option to report your own ideas. So once they are approved, they can also be taken into consideration to be delivered with one of the future versions. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Oh, hello. Okay, Montana. Hi from Montana. Hi from Warsaw. Hello, Montana. Right. So if you like the presentation, then please I mean, if you didn't like as well, then anyway, leave the feedback. I value every feedback, every kind of information coming from you. So even if it's bad or positive, I love to hear that because it helps me to develop, to learn and change things I'm showing. And if you have any questions to me, now is the time to post them in the Q&A, or you can use one of these social media links that I'm presenting right now to reach me there. So via the email or Twitter or LinkedIn, maybe YouTube, or maybe my blog post, my blog, anywhere, anyhow you'd like to. That's a good way to contact me.
Hey, thank you very much, Thomas, for this
Right.
nice presentation. Lot many new things to learn, and
Thank you.
even
And
Schema
have a
also.
rest. I mean, have an awesome rest of the conference. So awesome sessions.
Even I see responses like thank you for the presentation, very helpful.
Plus, if you're still interested in more around adaptive cards, on my blog and in my YouTube channel, you can find a couple of posts and videos on how to use them, how to author them, how to actually create working solutions step by step, very detailed. So navigate to that blog and then well, try to read them.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any outstanding
All right,
questions for
so
the
now I'm
Q&A,
waiting for
but
your questions.
yeah, but I will still encourage everyone to post their questions into the Q&A. Okay, I will take this opportunity to have one question. So, for example, let's say we have been working with this web pages, HTML kind of a thing since past. So, for example, if we have a content inside our HTML page, so is there any way to convert it to adaptive cards? Like, is there any tool or any methodology
I have to say
available?
that with all these live events, I always have the feeling that I'm just talking to myself. However, there are at least two responses. So one anonymous and one from Donna. So at least two people were watching.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much. Can you still hear me?
So Nandep,
Yeah.
what is the next step? Now we should have the Q&A, right? But
Yeah. Right. So
it
at least
doesn't look promising.
correct. So there are no outstanding questions in the Q&A, but I just
So
have
what
one.
next?
Yeah, I just have one question for you. So mostly like we are working with the HTML content, right? So is there any way or mechanism or tool available by which we will be able to transform those HTML content to the adaptive cards?
All right, I'll just maybe
Yep.
pack my things and go.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Just leave the stage for the next presenter. All right. So once again, thank you very much. Please reach me out through the social media if you have any questions. I will now log off and leave the stage to another presenter. Have a great day or evening or morning, wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Just a moment. Oh yeah. There are just thank you messages for you in the Q&A. Okay. Thank you very much for this nice presentation, and thanks all for joining. And see you soon again in the other sessions. Thank you very much.